Hello, everyone, and welcome to Press Coverage. As a part of the Going for Two Live network, which is available most days here on YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and Twitter. Although, as always, we can't get the Twitter comments, so anyone wanting to interact, head over to the other Going for Two Live platforms. But yes, Press Coverage as always. One-on-one interviews, myself, Kyle Senra, and my guest for this episode, Linda. So, Linda, thanks for kicking it with us today.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys having me on. Anytime I get to come on going for two in any capacity, I'm glad we can put the difference in kicker opinion behind us.
Yeah, I know. As much as the armchair show's intro is awesome, I'm sure you don't necessarily appreciate the lyrics. So, no crazy intro here. Just this crazy co-host or crazy host. But yeah, I mean, crazy, right? We're all crazy. I mean, fans, right? What does fan stand for? Fanatic, whether fantasy or sports fans. So we're all kind of obsessed with everything sports wise. But where did that all begin with you, Linda? What were your first sports memories?
Oh man. Well, first of all, I'm very competitive. I don't I probably don't like to lose more than I actually enjoy winning. I just really hate losing. And so I'm competitive in like any nature. If we sit down to play game night, I have a friend that we just don't play sorry as a rule of thumb because it was getting violent. Excuse me. But as far as sports go, my dad was a huge sports guy. I mean, he played in like rec softball leagues and everything. So I was always out of the house and watching sports. And then he played at Oklahoma State. So I was born and bred in Orange Power. And like I said, it just once it bites you, I think it just kind of gradually grows. But I'm not like people are like, I bet you're really fun to watch games with, and I'm not. It's not pleasant. If we're losing, I'm not in a good mood. Like jokes are not a good time, and when we're winning, I'm just really loud and obnoxious. So the fanatic thing is really hitting the nail on the head in terms of like a vocabulary word.
Yeah, for sure. And then so you mentioned Ohio State, or sorry, Ohio State, Oklahoma State. I don't know college well. Apparently, I don't even know U.S. geography well. Oklahoma, that's in like the Northwest, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, good. You see, and which is why Denver, which is also in the Northwest, is why they're in the AFC West, right? That also works too, I think.
Oh yeah.
Dallas
Oh
is in the
yeah.
East. That's why they're in the NFC East. Yeah, I learned my geography from the NFL. So thanks, NFL. Teaching us as role models for everyone. But again, I don't know if it's just the orange tie, but also a fan of the Denver Broncos, right?
Yeah, actually, I'd make that joke a lot because I'm also a Thunder fan and they also have orange. And I'm like, orange is so not, it's not a good color for my like color wheel, my palette. And it is, most of my clothing has orange in it somewhere. Um, but I definitely, I didn't watch any NFL growing up. It wasn't like a big part of my childhood. It was all college sports for me. And I had a really good friend. She's been my friend since like third grade, and they were big Denver Broncos fans. So when I stayed the night at her house on Saturdays, we'd get up and watch the Broncos, and her dad would cook and stuff. So it just kind of, I once I started playing fantasy football, and I was like, I should probably have a team. So I just kind of latched on fully to the only thing I knew.
I mean, that's what sports fans try to convert you to their team, right? And that's some positive reinforcement. I'll come over, hang out with my daughter, have a fun time watching the Broncos, then eat this good food watching the Broncos. That's some good, unfortunately, early brainwashing that shows that it works.
Yeah, absolutely. You just indoctrinate them small. That's what I'm doing to mine right now. She's 7. I just like feed her all my crap and hope that she's just saying whatever I say. It's great.
Although I think I listened to the Get Real podcast, your appearance with Casey, and it sounds like the Chief. There might be a Chief influence as well. So sorry about that.
Yeah, there is. And the like just on Friday, she came out of her room and she was like, I'm wearing my Chief shirt. I was like, okay, well, put a hoodie on. Like, don't walk out of my house in that.
Yeah, you don't want to. Yeah, you don't want to be viewed as strange. Oh, that's not an orange.
Exactly. Exactly.
Apparently, Toronto Dave feels like it would be a good time to watch with you. I feel like as long as it's not the team you're rooting against, right? Like if you're just like a neutral observer in the room, it probably is pretty entertaining, to be honest.
Yeah, neutral's it's a lot safer for everybody in the room. And that's what like I always tell people when like if the Cowboys are losing and people on Twitter will be like, "Oh, nobody like say anything to Lindellians. And I'm like, just don't tag me. I'm not in the mood for jokes. I don't think it's cute or funny. I'm in a bad mood.
But yeah, I guess orange is kind of a neutral color, right? And apparently Dave also likes the color orange, so that fits in there. And I
Of
guess
course he does.
apparently Russell Wilson and his family are liking the orange as well. So as a Denver Broncos fan, what was your reaction to the Russell Wilson trade?
Man, here's the thing that's like really bites. I think Drew Lock should have started last year. I was never on board the Teddy Bridgewater thing, and I don't think he was treated very fairly. But how do you not get excited about Russell Wilson? I watched that video of him throwing a bomb to Cortland Sutton an unhealthy amount of times. I watched it a lot. Uh, and I love Sierra. I've always like I listened to 1-2 Step like 14 times that day. So I'm excited that he's a Bronco. I think he's brings good culture and the way he carries himself I really like. So I'm excited to see what he can do on the field. I think the Broncos were really a quarterback away from being a contender. So hopefully we can finally get it done.
I remember you didn't believe in Bridgewater at all. We're in a league together, and I tried to. I mean, it's like I spammed everyone who had a first left for Teddy Bridgewater, and frankly, everyone refused, including yourself. And I did it just after he was named the starter, and I believe you had Lock on that team. So like, oh, she'll probably definitely want this. No, no one wanted Bridgewater, so he's still on my team. Yeah.
Yeah. Those are my favorite players. You're like, "Well, you and me, we're just riding this out now." Like, it's just we're just gonna finish this thing.
Yeah, apparently Goodies is also he says dope song, but he really should have said good song. Sorry, Dave. But yeah. Okay, well that's the team side of it. So what do you think the fantasy implications of this are specifically for the Broncos? And I think the first thing people would ask is who does this benefit more, Cortland Sutton or Jerry Judy?
I think Cortland Sutton is that team's wide receiver one, both for fantasy and in real life. He just kind of brings I hate the term alpha, but I feel like when you're talking about fantasy wide receivers, there are often those guys on teams that stick out that way. And I think Cortland Sutton does. I have a ton of Cortland Sutton from last year when he had been hurt and missed a lot of the season. So you could get him late. And I also thought that Drew Lock was going to start. And like, we can argue about his skill set from forever, but he can throw a deep ball. I mean, not all the time with accuracy, but he does do it. Whereas Teddy Bridgewater is just like that's just not his game, and it's a lot more game managed and not great for fantasy football. Turns out it wasn't that great for real football in terms of like scoring points, which you need to do. But so I think it definitely benefits Cortland Sutton more. But Jerry Judy has been such, from a fantasy standpoint, a disappointment. I think we put a lot on him to perform well. Everybody was really excited about him as a prospect. So I'm excited to see him kind of take the next step, and I think he'll be able to do that. But I still think Cortland Sutton's the guy in Denver.
Okay, so do you think it'll be a clear one is Sutton, two is Judy, or do you think there's competition for that number two receiver spot?
I think it'll probably be Sutton and Judy. I know Albert O fans love him, and he is very athletic, but we haven't seen a full like starting season from him yet. Uh, and Tim Patrick is fantastic. He's a great guy for like best ball games when he has those big games that you just don't see coming. But I think it'll be Sutton then Judy in pecking order for targets.
Okay, and actually, just if we could expand that, who would you rather have between those third and fourth options, Tim Patrick or Albert Okwuegbunam?
I'm probably taking Tim Patrick. I think he's cheaper like just the way that people are perceiving Albert O right now and how excited they are for him. And again, I get it. He's an athletic freak. Those are the tight ends that you want on your team, are the super athletic guys. But I think there are cheaper options for that kind of tight end spot, especially at tight end where you're just kind of guessing anyway. Whereas Tim Patrick immediately becomes a viable option if any of the wide receivers get hurt. And again, you have the chance, like if you were desperate and you need a guy for a bye week, there is a good chance that he goes off on any given week. So I would probably take Tim Patrick.
So we got fantasy friends joining us. Welcome all our friends. Says if Sutton is the wide receiver one on that team, then he's a good value in startups right now. I am in a startup, and I believe Judy went ahead of Sutton. I kind of feel like maybe in redraft we'll see their prices closer, but for now it looks like in Dynasty going with the younger guy and Judy seems to be the case. So kind of would make it, Linda, an easy avoid for you, Judy, and then kind of setting an easy target in that case.
Yeah, absolutely. But I am certainly not. I think the Dynasty community puts a lot of stock into age, whereas like I don't look at a 24, 25-year-old and be like, "Pff, over it. I'm not doing that again." Like I just I get that you want young guys, but I'm gonna take production almost every time over like a super young guy.
Which, to be fair, going with Dave's comment here, Tim Patrick is underrated. I think that's part of it too. Off his rookie contract, onto the second contract. The fantasy
Yep.
footballers always joke it's because his name isn't exciting. So
Yeah.
just if you had a Fireball, Tim Fireball or Fireball Patrick, then everyone will remember who he is. So
Yep, exactly. We didn't come
and
up with a good nickname. We'll work on that.
well, it would be an orange Fireball as well. So
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
so I think actually just one more player to talk about is how high do you now consider Russell Wilson in the? We'll go with the dynasty rankings in terms of the quarterbacks, like specifically looking at super flex leagues. Do you think he's worth being taken in that first round or not?
Oh, probably not. The thing with quarterbacks right now is there's just like a ton of there's a ton of young guys coming in. Like the kind of landscape of the quarterbacks is changing, where Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady and Russell Wilson, even I think, are kind of falling a little bit just because of age. Whereas you have all these young guys like Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, Patrick Mahomes, now Justin Fields and Trey Lance, who people really like, and Joe Burrow, who's young, like these guys that are a little bit younger and kind of taking over the face of the NFL. It's happening in Superflex as well. So I think you can get Russell Wilson cheaper. I'm not going to reach for him in the first round because I think he's likely to fall out of the top 12 QBs, especially with the way people think about age and rushing upside and all the stock that people have put in Trey Lance, hopefully starting for the 49ers. So I think he's a little bit I think you can get him cheaper. So he's not a guy that I'm necessarily reaching for. I think he has top 12 quarterback potential, but it'll be, he's not going to be a guy that you take that early in dynasty leagues just because of his age, I think.
Well, maybe not you, but I am in a startup and 14 teams, so did kind of stretch that first round of 2 picks, and yeah, sitting at the 114, I made that decision to take Wilson ahead of Jalen Hurts, ahead of Justin Fields. Lance was off the board, so that was kind of a decision I didn't have to make, although I kind of prefer those other 2 guys to Lance anyway. But that was really kind of, Wilson or one of the 2 young guys. I could have double tapped as well, but I traded back. So
I'm not a big Jalen Hurts. I'm not a big Jalen Hurts fan, so I can get behind that. But from a community standpoint, people certainly like him. So I guess it depends on what kind of draft you're in.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I just didn't. I guess at the end of the first, kind of take what you can get. So I just took Wilson there, but Gerson's in. Apparently, pretty excited to see Linda, and well, me too. But who's excited for that? It's all about Linda. And I guess So what was you talked about the starting experiences with your father getting you into Oklahoma State. You almost said Ohio again. Sorry. And then your friend's father getting into the Broncos. But what got you into fantasy football?
Man, so that one is it's so convoluted how I got started because I started playing my dad needed one more person for a league. I was working like 12-hour shifts. I had a newborn baby. I'm like, I don't have time to like sit down and I don't know what I'm doing and I can't draft. And he was like, I will draft for you if you'll just control your lineups. And I don't know anything. I don't watch the NFL. I'm like, okay, whatever. They clearly need somebody so that he can play in a work league. But sitting down and like having that thing to do for myself every, before Thursday night games and on Sunday mornings, it was just fun. It gave me something to do and like focus on for myself. So I started watching the NFL. And then I didn't play for like a year. And then I reconnected with a buddy from high school who had just moved back to our hometown. And he was like, let's do a fantasy football league. And so now we've been in that one for, I think we're going on year 6. And after that, it just became a full blown obsession. I went from like 1 league to 30 fast. there was not a whole lot of space in between it, but I just kind of became obsessed.
Okay. The obsession is usually not good, but I will say, and from the sounds of it, it seems like fantasy football is good for your mental health. And I know it is definitely for myself, so I can definitely relate to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And like that's what when it is in season and people are like, "Oh, I get so mad and watching the games and watching my team." I'm like, "Stop watching your teams. What are you going to do about it? just watch the game. I just still enjoy the football. It's the like process of I love, and that's why I like redraft too. It's the start sit conversation. It's the waiver wire. It's all that. That's like fun for me. It's like tinkering with something almost. And I'm a tinkerer. Like I like to do that kind of crap. So it's definitely a mental health exercise for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I think the time of year where I'll get more into like watching the lineup is fantasy playoffs, championship league. That's when I might, focus in on one or two leagues in particular and really stress about it. But yeah,
Yeah.
again, it's the understanding what parts of the aspect of fantasy football are good for the mental health and what parts aren't. Some people may enjoy that lineup looking at during games and live scoring updates, and do what you enjoy. Apparently,
Yeah,
Dave
absolutely.
enjoys the interactions, especially the way you're talking about like players at their cost, because that is everything, right? We're talking about either startup costs or trade costs, and yeah, seems like
Love
you've
you,
had some.
TD.
Sorry.
That's my boy. That's my boy, TD. I love him.
Yeah, Dave is pretty awesome. And I guess, yeah, awesome people. I know a bit of your story, so I do know that you've had some awesome people help you get into fantasy football creation, but maybe content creation, I should say. But for maybe some people who that information right now is confidential, can you kind of give us some insight on how everything got started?
Yeah, mostly I just like first of all, I got into the fantasy football community on Twitter and I was like, it was just this whole world of like I work with my mom. I'm telling her about like wide receivers and running backs and this fresh or rookie that's coming in and blah blah. And she's like, she doesn't care, she doesn't watch it. I mean, she listens, she's very supportive, but she has no idea what I'm talking about. And so finding a community where I'm like, oh, all these people want to talk about the same things that I want to talk about all the time. First of all, it's like finding a home you didn't know you had, and so that was fantastic. I've made wonderful friends, but I realized I was just kind of existing on the outside of it, and I wanted to exist more inside of it and put out information and do the research and do the work. And I wanted to podcast, but I was nervous to talk on camera and hate my voice. Like, when you listen to yourself and you're like, ugh, that is awful. And so I was like really nervous to get started, but I became friends with Troy and just like through the timeline. And then John Bauer and Mitch Sorensen wanted to start a podcast and reached out to Troy and they wanted one more person. So Troy reached out to me and I bought a laptop and a microphone and some lights and just kind of powered through it. But I had a ton of support from everybody encouraging me. And like I said, finding friends that I consider lifelong friends at this point that I talk to every day that build me up, that I can bounce ideas off of. And I think that's probably the most underrated part of the community is how easy it is to find like a safe space like that. And just like, I'll exploit it. If I'm having a bad day, they're going to hear about it. So it's just a good place to like have something to like go back to if you're having a bad day on the timeline. And there's a ton of Twitter drama and whatever, but having a safe space where you can go like, I can't do that today, but I still want to talk about my thing is very important in my opinion.
Like Dave's saying, fantasy football Twitter is Bay, right? And I mean, like you're saying,
Absolutely.
it's helps during bad days, but when things are going good, it's also a great to help emphasize that joy.
Yep, exactly.
And speaking of joy, Gerson's right. Red Zone is our best friend. Check on all the fantasy players.
Yep, absolutely. I don't know, like I watch some non-red zone, but like red zone is definitely as soon as noon hits here on Sundays, it's like, okay, I'm sitting here for the next 7 hours. I'll see you guys. Like, I'll see y'all later. This is where I'll be.
I'm sure you make exceptions for Broncos games or something important.
I
But
don't usually get them because I live in Oklahoma. So like there's a lot of Chiefs fans around these parts. So we get a lot of Chiefs games. We get a lot of Browns games because at the time Baker Mayfield, of course, was their starting quarterback and he played for OU. So we get a ton of games that it's like, I don't want to watch this full game. So I watch a lot of red zone and then pull up Broncos like where I can if I can find a stream on my phone. But unfortunately, because of where I live, I don't get a lot of great games.
So again, red zone.
Yeah.
Are you going to ever petition for them to change it to orange zone or?
I don't know. If I can if I can infiltrate, maybe. I gotta take down the NCAA first though. Like that's priority number one is get a job there and burn it to the ground. And then I can work on getting it to be the Orange Zone.
I fully support that, but again, I don't really care, and I'm not invested at all. So, burn away. Apparently, you're not the only one who hates to listen to themselves recorded. I feel like for most people, it's strange, right? The literally the voice we hear of ourselves in our head resonates slightly than what it is outside of our of
Yeah,
our
freaks
of
me
our
out.
head, and so it does kind of throw everyone off a little bit.
Yeah.
So I guess we talk about pieces of advice for people. Maybe it's how do you deal with not liking your own voice. But anyone who does want to start creating content or does want to start podcasting, what would you say to them?
Do it. You have to put yourself out there. Like I think that's most important. My first year, like the first year that I started getting on shows, I was on shows almost 5 days a week. Like, I'd take the weekends off, Saturday and Sunday, I wouldn't do anything, but almost every night I was coming home and doing some kind of show because I wanted to get my name out there, and, that's it's just a matter of, like, if you wanna do it, do it. Somebody will let you write for them. You may not get paid right away. It just depends on how serious you wanna take it. Do you wanna do it for fun? Are you worried about making a living? But all of those answers don't get answered, or all those questions don't get answered unless you actually start doing it. So that's most important. And if you do hate your voice, just listen to it enough and it kind of gets better. I'm not saying it's like great, but I do one show 5 days a week I have to edit. So I've gotten better at listening to myself. It just takes practice.
It's the you talk about the Locked On Oklahoma State podcast, right?
Yep, Lockdown Pokes. And it's great, but I had to learn how to. I'd never edited before. John did all of that with Confidential. The Fantasy Besties that we do is just a live show. We don't record anything. So I had never done that part of it. And I was like, oh shit. Like, oh, sorry. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, but I had to focus on getting over some self-confidence humps when I took that gig for sure.
And I guess what kind of influenced that jump for you to go from a like a group podcast to be doing the solo one? Like what like did you have any particular influences that helped along the way?
Um, man, I mean, like, I talk to myself all the time, and I joke, I'll have a conversation with a brick wall. I do not care, but um, I got really lucky. A friend of mine that I know through Twitter and through fantasy football is friends with the guy that was doing the hiring for the college side of that podcast. Mentioned he needed an Oklahoma State host. My buddy was like, excuse me, I know an Oklahoma State fan. And it just kind of went from there. And I took a week to go, like, do I have it in me to sit down and talk to myself for 30 minutes a day? And it turns out that I did. It wasn't that hard at all.
Good job, Linda, for the self influence there. But yes, always again back to the whole fantasy community, the outreach that we have in this not just Twitter sphere, but kind of evolving on different social medias. But this fantasy football community we have really does help us and get these great relationships that go beyond just this fun game we play.
Absolutely. Connect with people. Like Sam Wallace is really good about preaching this, but he always talks about, like, your connection with people is where all of it starts. And when you have the mental space for it, you should want to connect with the people that are online all the time. I try to and then there are days where I'm like, I can't do any other people today, and I'll take that day off. Like, you have to be cognizant of, if you need to take a step back, do so.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and again, the life outside of football and fantasy football can exist. And so I guess next question, what are some of your favorite hobbies outside of all the fun sports stuff we've talked about so far?
They're all like super nerdy. Like, I'm way into Lego. Um, Unfortunately, it's not a very cheap hobby, so I have to like be cautious about that one. But I got my daughter into Lego, so now I can like buy stuff for her and be like, it's for her, but it's kind of for me, and we do them together.
Aw.
And sometimes I buy ones that I'm like, no, this is mine, and I'll like stay up all night and do it and drink on my floor and have myself an evening. And then I read a lot, and I read, like, everybody. I'm in like a group chat that's a bunch of fantasy writers that share what books they're reading, which is great in theory, but in practice for me, like, I read strictly rom-com novels, and they're all like super cheesy and predictable, but I love them. And then like they're sending back like Dune and Lord of the Flies, and I'm like, oh, I don't think if you guys ever need a recommendation, I got you. But I think I'll just keep my books to myself.
Well, I was gonna say that those books may come up later in this episode, but we'll take 5 for now. I guess. Well, okay, so maybe no one knew about the Legos, and I guess one piece of advice I'll give with the Legos, I always love action scenes and violence and fighting. So I always get the Lego ships I make to crash and get destroyed. And it's like, oh, now you got to rebuild them, right? So it's kind of the cycle to remake fun. But yeah, that's just the
Yeah,
little
that's
hack
a good
there.
idea. Her Legos, like the ones that we buy for her,
Mhm.
she take them apart and build stuff, and she's like super creative. Where like I want the book and I want it to be put together exactly how it's supposed to be put together. And I'll even go as far like I have a couple that I've super glued together as I was building it because I'm like, I just want this to look nice forever. And then she'll be like, "What? I can't." She's like, "Can I play with it?" I'm like, "No, you can look at it from afar." Oops.
Hey, gluing your Legos together, that is pretty nerdy, to be fair. That's awesome.
Well, what are you gonna do? I just like it to look pretty. It's like, but again, it's the tinkering thing. It's like doing something very small. It doesn't matter to anybody but me, but boy, it's cathartic.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I guess that's all that matters, is that it matters to you, and that's the most important thing.
Yeah.
So I guess, well, that's maybe something not a lot of people knew. But is there anything else that the fantasy community doesn't know that you've kept confidential up to this point?
Man, I wish that like I just tweet so much. Like I put like everything out there. I don't know. I don't know. I don't bake well. I guess I'll put that out there. Like I can cook with the best of them. I'll hang in a kitchen, but when it comes to like cupcakes and bread and shit, that sorry. I apologize.
I'm pretty
But
sure,
like,
like we had a show Wednesday, and I'm pretty sure there's tons of swearing going on in that. From
okay.
what I understand, as long as it's not in the first 3 minutes, stuff doesn't get demonetized. And I don't even think there's that much money in this anyway in this show, so I think you're okay.
But I like to cook, but I don't bake well. That's my fun fact.
Dave's just yelling out true crime. I don't know if
Oh,
that's
I
to do
do
with
love true
books
crime.
or yeah, but I
Both
guess he
books
knew
and
that
the
about you.
podcast.
So
Yeah, I get weird about true crime though, because like I'll get like hooked on a case and then it's the only thing I think about for like a week and a half. And then I completely forget about it and move on to the next one. But it's a problem.
I almost picture nerdy Linda with the Charlie Day like conspiracy theory trying to solve it all too.
Yeah, well, Reddit's terrifying, but it is really good for like if you're a true crime junkie. People will spend an insane amount of time trying to solve crimes on there, and then you don't have to do it. I'm just like reading updates, sending them to like the one other person I know that knows about the case. Like, did you see this? Can you believe it? It's a problem.
Oh well, we have tons of other things we can solve problems with, right? Like podcasts solve problems, and I guess
Absolutely.
if you could interview one person on your podcast, who would you love to interview?
Oh, that's tough. I really want like this is like no bullshit. Is I just really want to interview kickers and like ask them questions that no like weird like not normal, like how do you prepare for a game and what goes on like mentally. I want to know like, do you wear the same pair of socks for every game? Are you clipping your toenails weird? Forget like, do you just like not clip them in the playoffs? Does it affect you if you stub your toe? I want to know. I have questions and not normal ones. So I think that would be really. I just think it would be fun to like sit down and talk to the guys, the long snappers, the punters, the guys that don't necessarily get a whole lot of camera time. I think that would be really fun.
It is called football, right? Like embrace the feet, embrace the athletes that actually use their feet to
Yeah,
produce something.
exactly. I got questions.
All right, and then I guess last one before we get back to more fantasy stuff. What's one revelation that you do have now, but you wish you'd gotten earlier?
Oh man, this is just specifically to Superflex Dynasty leagues, but I did not put enough emphasis on quarterback when I first started playing. And I went from like I played in like 4 redraft leagues to all of a sudden I'm in 12 leagues and half of them are Superflex Dynasty leagues, tied in like stuff that I've never done before. And this is going to be a part A and part B, but it's making sure that you value those players. Like, I did not value quarterback well at all in Superflex when I first started, and it's still not. I still haven't been able to fully remedy those teams. And then knowing your scoring, because the way that the scoring is in every league is so important.
No, those are good points, and I guess maybe the problem the first year was join all the leagues at once. You're not playing out the season, understanding the ramifications of the draft picks. Once you're in season, seeing how the points score, that's when you really get a good idea of how this game really does work. After all,
Yeah. There's a lot of leagues that don't have a quarterback in the super flex spot that I'm just like punching air trying to get through a full season right now.
Again, the tinkering, that's the fun, the long term.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, so I guess that kicks off the fantasy portion, which Linda kicking things off, crazy about that, right? But before we talk about the kickers, let's talk about running backs. I love running backs. Everyone knows that. But what are your thoughts about zero RB?
I actually really enjoy zero running back. I started kind of drafting that way last year, just playing with it. And then the more mock drafts I did, the more I enjoyed the way those teams were built. I just think wide receivers are so much more fun. It doesn't even like fully have to do with how teams end up. I just like having more options at wide receiver. That's who I want in my flex spots. I'm not going to start a running back in my flex spot unless I'm forced to. And so I got no problem waiting. When I first started drafting a lot and like really doing this, I did more of the like hero running back where I took one in the beginning and then waited forever. But last season I kind of transitioned into fully just like punting completely on running back. It was just more fun. It's just more fun to draft that way. I don't know that it's better all the time, but it's certainly more fun to draft that way for me.
And especially if you're playing super flex, one less position that takes away from emphasizing quarterback so much.
Right. Exactly.
Where you're taking quarterbacks as okay, am I taking the elite running back or not? And yeah, so I guess it kind of coincides that you can still fill the middle with wide receivers and the zero RBs at the end that everyone always loves.
I'm guessing you're not a fan.
Well, I love the zero RBs at the end, but I also love taking the running backs early, right? Those like James Conner, Devin Singletary's last year, I had a ton of, even though I do kind of tend to enjoy going with the running backs early personally. But yeah, not I'll experiment with the hero RB, maybe not quite the zero RB. I think that's I'm still a little too scared to do that.
That's how it starts. That's how it starts, Kyle.
Yeah, we'll see. Well, I guess at the startup we did together last year, I tried the hero RB and it was Cam Akers, so went from hero to zero real quick. So it was a zero RB team basically.
Yeah, that hurt. There were a ton of like early running back injuries last year. Like it was the wrong year for me to start going zero running back because all year I was like, see, I did it right. But now I'm like, nobody's gonna get hurt this year and it's gonna backfire. I just know it.
I don't know. I have a feeling with football, people are gonna get hurt. I don't know. That's just me, but hopefully,
Nope.
I don't hope it, but yeah, we'll see. Just to plug because injuries happen. Plug Doc's injuries suck, but your fantasy team doesn't have to book because they will happen. So this book will help you get ready. So at TFS Doc for Dr. James Freddy and everything, he does great for us here at Going for Two. But yeah, definitely encourage you to get that book. I believe through his Twitter account, you have the links to get that book. So yeah, injuries suck, but your fantasy team doesn't have to. And I guess what doesn't suck is when you get to have your favorite league formats. So what is your preferred format, Linda?
I am as vanilla on this as you could possibly be, but it's like one quarterback, 2 to 3 wide receivers, usually 2 running backs, a flex or 2, and a kicker and a defense. And yes, I like the defense and I like the kicker. And a tight end. And I don't want tight end premium. I don't want 2 quarterbacks. I just want I like every kind of league. I've never played one where I went like, oh, this is awful. I like the leagues that are like all flex spots or several super flex spots, and they're all great. But I want my very basic. I always still want that league to exist, that like classic home league setting to exist.
I guess thinking back to your first fantasy experiences, right? And that's
Yep.
the inertia of it all, kind of like everything goes back to that first league.
Just got to remember my roots. It's important.
Are there any scoring settings, anything particular about the scoring more that you like to have, or not even scoring, but any setting in particular that you feel like is a must have in all leagues?
Well, you know how I feel about must-have positions. No, I think everybody should play how they want to play, but I do like 6-point touchdown passes instead of 4-point. I just think it kind of evens out the rushing quarterback upside. It's so tough because, like, with quarterbacks like Jalen Hurts, who I don't think is a very good real life quarterback, but he is a fantasy star, and so that I like that 6-point passing that kind of can tip those scales a little bit back in the right direction.
And I guess just kind of came to me because you do love kickers so much. What do you think are the optimal or best way to have kicker scoring in fantasy football?
Like Scott Fish did it last year. I like the you want to do like the decimal scoring per yardage. So like if it's a 42-yard field goal, that's 4.2 points. I don't know that I'm doing -3 per missed field goal. That felt aggressive, but I do think you are going to lose points for misses. So strike a point for any missed extra point, strike a point for any missed field goals, and then doing the decimal scoring for their yardage.
Okay, well, I guess yeah. Speaking of Scott Fishbowl, yeah, the first year they introduced kickers. I know I'm wearing the one of the shirts from last year, but yeah, and I guess all this great Scott Fishbowl gear, the going for two gear as well, this great hat, all from Viridian Global. So check them out at viridianglobal.com, or going for two store specifically on goingfor2.com/store. So yeah, but you must have been super excited when you found out that kickers were in Scott Fish 12. I think it was 12.
11.
11. We're 12
No,
this year.
no. Yeah, right. We're 12 this year. It was SFB 11.
I'm already
And
getting ahead of myself.
it was great when Scott Fish dropped a tweet that was like it was like a fill in the blank thing. So we had people like guessing what was going to be different this year. And I remember immediately being like, this feels like there's going to be kickers, and I love the way that he did it because he didn't do it where you had to play one. It was an option if you wanted to. I played one every week just to make a point, but it was I think he did it in a way that if you want to play with them, you can. If you don't want to play with them, you don't have to. And having that kind of option was, I think, really smart in the grand scheme of things when there's such a weird aggressive back and forth battle between having kickers and not having him. Scott was able to find the middle ground. Of course he was. But it was awesome. I loved it. It let me work on my like spreadsheets. I got to do a bunch of just weird math and getting finding out like how kickers performed last year and comparing them to all the different positions. So it was just fun for me to get to play around with that.
And how did you do in the Scott Fish Bowl starting a kicker every week?
I made it to the playoffs this year, and I did not make it to the playoffs in SFBX. So I mean, that's a win for me. I'm going to take it.
Well, I will add to your win because I think I had Vicanzo, like the original Chargers kicker last year before they replaced him. I had him for a couple weeks. I don't think I ever started him though, but I think he was the only kicker I ever rostered at any point. To me, the -3 for missed field goals just scared me completely. There's too much risk. I don't want this. So like I had okay, I'll go with the elite kickers, and then after that, I don't really want to draft any of these guys. So I didn't make the playoffs. So there's more to your kicker propaganda.
Perfect.
And I didn't miss by much. Like I had I think it was a 7-5 record. Like maybe a win or two away and more total points. So maybe something like a kicker, more consistency to my lineup every week might have changed it. So you can kind of use that anecdote if you want to
Absolutely
on this story.
I'm just gonna cut that part of the show, and so I can remember that.
Right about 40 minutes, a little less. Actually, I can do this pretty quick. I usually ramble more, but one last fantasy question before we get to the final section. But before we kick our way out of here, but who is your all-time favorite fantasy or player one at every position? QB, RB, wide receiver, tight end, and just for you, we're also adding kicker. I don't normally do that, yeah.
Yes.
Hope you feel
Well,
hope you feel honored and privileged.
I haven't been playing that long, so I'm not gonna say any names that make people go like, "Oh my god, I remember him," but, so I'm just gonna stick with, and my memory is, shot, so I'm, not going that far back. I just wanna put that out in the world before I answer this. I'm gonna go tight end Mark Andrews, who I just adore, and he's a Sooner, so, like, he went to school at OU. I should not love this man, but I really like him, and I think, he's still being undervalued. I understand that Kyle Pitts is, 12 or whatever, but, I'm taking Mark Andrews first at tight end right now in age and production. He just seems like the number one guy, and he was on both my Scott Fishbowl teams. He's just, you were able to get him at a discount the last 2 years, even though we knew what he brought to the table. So I like Mark Andrews. I have loved Mark Andrews since he got in the league. At wide receiver, I'm going to Demaryius Thomas, who I adored. He was definitely a big component into getting me into fantasy football and into the Denver Broncos. That he was just kind of like the rest of a triangle that fully sucked me into the person that I am now. Quarterback, and again, I'm going young. I'm going Justin Herbert, who I adored. I adored coming into the league. I got him in a lot of rookie drafts. And then last year I was saying that I would take him and Josh Allen before Patrick Mahomes. And everybody was like, "You're a psychopath." And now everybody's like, maybe we should take Justin Herbert before Patrick Mahomes. And I'm like, "You're late. It's me first." And I'm like, "I won't hear otherwise." So I have a good connection with Justin Herbert just based on, when I'm right, it feels good. At running back, I'm going to go Todd Gurley, who is probably the reason that I still play fantasy football. I had him the year that he was an absolute terror of a running back. And one night I was playing against the guy that I co-commish our home leagues with. He was at my house. We're hanging out watching football. It was a Monday night, and I needed like 6 points from Todd Gurley. And that was the year that he put up double digits like every game. I'm like, "I'm good. I got this." He scored like 4 points as the game was ending. It was just like, this isn't going to happen. And again, I'm like playing my buddy that I'm watching with. So he's not saying anything. We're just both like sitting in silence. Lost that game. Never, ever wanted to feel that way again. I was like, I don't want to lose. Like when I lose because I made the wrong lineup decision, or I started a stud because that's what you're supposed to do, that infuriates me. And it brings me back every single time. So it's definitely Todd Gurley at running back. And then, man, at kicker, I think I got to go Tyler Bass, who I adored as a prospect and has done really well for the Bills. I have his signed jersey, which I bought one night when I got blackout drunk. And
Is
so
the
I
jersey
have
black?
no, it's the red throwbacks.
Okay.
I know, the good ones. And a buddy messaged me and he was like, "Tyler Bass is selling a bunch of signed stuff." I was like, "Send me the link right now." So now I've got me a signed Tyler Bass jersey. But that was just my guy. I really liked his story. I like to like read about why they do some of the stuff they do, and he talks about his grandma and why he wears like the one side of eye black. I just think he's fun. He brings a lot of fun to the football field. So I'll go Tyler Bass there.
That's his version of the blackout.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
fun. I probably wholeheartedly agree with you on the Mark Andrews thing. I just kind of went back and tracked at the end of the year, and I believe Mark Andrews is the player I've won the most fantasy championships with. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I had his big breakout year, his second year. Yeah, I guess it would have been his second year. He and Jackson were rookies the same year. So Lamar Jackson's first full-time season. I remember he was going so late, and I just grabbed a ton of Mark Andrews that year. So, reaping the
Always
rewards
feels
of it
good.
still.
Yeah. It always feels good, especially at tight end when you like grab the right guy, because there's very few of the right guys. So it
Yeah.
always feels good.
No, and now, anyone who's kind of, especially in Dynasty, wrote out maybe a not so great 2020 season, definitely reap the rewards in 2021.
Yep. Absolutely.
And yeah, I think, so Kyle Pitts is still in a void in fantasy then.
I just think first of all, who the hell else are they throwing to? And like that's concerning, but because there's like a fine line between too many weapons and like no weapons, in my opinion. And I know he's young and he's fantastic, and I think he will be a very, very good tight end. But I do not want to pay that price when I know for a fact a guy like Mark Andrews I can get a couple picks later, or a round later, whatever it is, depending on. Well, damn it, Toronto Dave. But I'm just not going to take him early because he's young and fantastic, and he was drafted as early as he was. When I know that there's production lying in guys like George Kittle, Mark Andrews, and Travis Kelce, even if they're a little bit older, it's still I'm still taking that production that I know exists.
The Chiefs hate there. I don't know if you did that consciously or subconsciously. You said Travis Kelce, and you kind of had a certain finger sticking up there. I think that was on purpose, wasn't it?
I don't draft Chiefs players. So yeah, I have like one league with Travis Kelce where it was a 16-team league, and Travis Kelce was going to get back to the guy that rostered Patrick Mahomes, and I was like, so I just took him because I didn't want him to have that stack.
And you could always just trade him to someone else, right?
Yeah, had to do it. Had to be done.
Had to follow that grenade for the rest of the league.
Yeah,
I'm sure they were all really happy for that. I'm sure. Well, if you got good points from Kelce, you're probably happy too.
Yeah, I feel all right about it.
All right, so now we get to the final portion of the show, and hopefully does make you and everyone happy. Talk about some stuff that you want to talk about. So, top 5 from 5 different topics here. So, we're going to start with your top 5 favorite artists or bands.
Here's the problem. I listen to my music goes from it'll be like Eminem, and then some Broadway musicals, and then like a Disney Channel song, and then country music. Like, I just listen to so much different stuff. I'll say right now I am going through a Leanne Rimes phase. I've been listening to the Coyote Ugly soundtrack on a loop. I like Olivia Rodrigo a lot. She makes me want to cry, and that's great. That's what I'm looking for in music. I'm always going through a Bare Naked Ladies phase. I am always going through a Panic at the Disco phase. And oh man, I don't know who my last one would be. I'm listening to the soundtrack of Tick Tick Boom from Netflix. It's a musical, so I'll put that one on there. I've been listening to that for like 3 months.
It's funny because I think, knowing especially what Scott Fishbowl division you were in last year, Bare Naked Ladies was not the Canadian band I expected you to name, but I think
I know.
I know I'm happy with it. I think Dave might be too.
I love Nickelback. I do. I've seen them in concert. They've been a part of I can sing every song, but at this point it's just like, they just kind of live in my head. Like, I don't like search out Nickelback songs. It's just that if they come on, I'm definitely going to scream them from the top of my lungs, Whereas like Let Her Cry, I'm like searching that out. I need it right now.
Oh, that's fair. Yeah. Nickelback, right? High five. So it does reference that a little bit. Nickels are still 5 cents to the States, right? I didn't get the exchange rate wrong there.
Yeah, you nailed it.
Okay, perfect. Nailed the nickels. Awesome. So now, okay, back to the book club. What are your top 5 favorite books?
Excuse me. I got to pull up. I'm just going to keep it short and sweet and do the books that I've read in the last year, like in 2022, because I can't go that far back. So my favorite 5 so far of this year, I read a book called All Roads Lead Here. That was fantastic. And it was a monster of a book. Like, I was like, there's no way I read all of that. And I flew through it. I stayed up till like 4 a.m. reading it. Better Than the Movies, Hook, Line, and Sinker, The Upside of Falling. And then the book I'm reading right now is already really good. And I'm only like 60. Like, as soon as we get done with this, I'm going to go sit on my couch and read for the foreseeable future. And it's called All the Things We Never Got Over. And it's really good so far. I'm only like 80 pages in, but I know I'm gonna fly through it. So
awesome.
That's I think great. That was 5.
Well, I guess since you read so much, I hope this question is appropriate. But top 5 movies? Do you have time to watch stuff?
Yeah, I actually, with movies and TV shows, I'm a big rewatcher because I have I want to know what's happening. First of all, my attention span is awful. I'm likely going to be up and moving around or doing something on my phone or doing fantasy, whatever it is. I'm usually doing something else while I'm watching TV. But movies, I'm going like 10 Things I Hate About You, probably one of my favorite movies all time. Coyote Ugly, another all-time favorite. Um, oh, I can't remember the name of it, but there's one on Netflix that I've been watching like crazy. Um, Remember the Titans up there on the top of my list of like movies I know every word to. And Pitch Perfect, another movie that I know every word to. Watched it when it came out. It was like the only movie I watched for several weeks. I think that's 5, besides the movie that the name I can't come up with. I can't remember the I'm gonna find it. Keep talking, I'm gonna find it. I'm
Well,
ready.
yeah. So I say, as much as I did enjoy Pitch Perfect, but as I am a Packers fan, so having part of the Green Bay Packers team in Pitch Perfect 2, does this hold a little special place in my heart? Bakhtiari's in there, Clay Matthews.
Yeah, I listen to that. That's another soundtrack that, like, it's constantly going in my house. Me and my daughter both really like it, so it's one we listen to a lot, and all of the music is good, but that first one, just that first Pitch Perfect really ruled my life my sophomore year of college. It was, like, all I watched. It was probably a problem.
So I'll keep rambling on and allow Linda to search up some things. You'll kick it to another time. Maybe punt the decision away. Any other puns about kicking? I don't know enough.
I can do TV shows while I search because I know my TV shows. I don't remember if
Sure.
that one's on there, but I think it is. Um, Gilmore Girls, very top of the list, best TV show in the entire world if I had to pick one. Criminal Minds, my other one that I've watched the most from beginning to end over and over and over and over again. I just started a rewatch like the other day. I'm already on season 5 because I just turn it on and wander around my house. Law and Order SVU, another favorite. Own the necklace that Olivia Benson wears in that show. Stranger Things, obsessed with it. Have Stranger Things socks. My Ego pair of socks are probably my favorite pair ever. And then, man, those are probably the top ones. I guess my last one, I'll go like Unsolved Mysteries, one of those kind of shows that like I'll just sit down and devour for a few hours. I love that kind of crap, that true crime 1 hour worth of like, and what made her break? Like, I want to know.
But yeah, so just to kind of continue the rambling on though, like the idea of the rewatch, right? And you were mentioning to kind of get the all the dialogue, make sure you understand everything. But I do truly believe any movie or any show that you think is good and worth watching is definitely at least worth watching a second time to go through, not just to part of it is to missing details that you maybe didn't catch the first time, but also understanding how they get to the end. Like everything in any show and movie sets up to how they go to the end. So understanding how each scene does relate to that eventual end is kind of important in the understanding of the movie
Well,
or
like, and
show.
I've been watching Gilmore Girls. My mom and I are very, very good friends. She's my favorite person in the world. When I hang out with her, my anxiety just like
Oh,
decompresses. It's just like that's what I did last night. It was a long week of work for both of us. So I went to her house last night and hung out, and we just laughed and had a blast. So we've been watching Gilmore Girls, which is a show about a single mom and her daughter, for years. And every single time I watch it, something else resonates with me. A different character that had never like connected to before all of a sudden says something that I'm like, oh, I identify with that, or whatever it is. When I was a kid, I hated the grandma. She was a bitch. And now that I'm older, I'm like, she's my favorite person in the world. And so like every time I watch it, it just gives me something different. And the movie that I was trying to think of off of Netflix is called The Trial of the Chicago 7.
okay. But like just with Gilmore Girls, because that would have come out when you were. I mean, you're still a daughter, but before you
Yeah.
had a daughter, right? Before you were a mother.
Oh
So
yeah.
like understanding that, like kind of the perspective and the relationships change, and how you could probably still are you Lorelai? I don't know.
Yeah, it's just like that's what it is. It's just it was watching it as a daughter and like liking certain things and disliking certain things, and then watching it now that I have a daughter where I'm like as a mom, I'm like, I don't know if that was cool. As a mom, I don't know if she should have done that. And like I said, every time I watch it, like there are episodes that I've seen 100 times and they've never made me cry. And then like I'll watch one. I put it on a lot when I need like a break from anything. I turn on Gilmore Girls. Monday when we had this scheduled and I didn't feel well, it was just on really quietly in the background because I can close my eyes and I know what's happening. But like I'll watch an episode that'll make me cry, and I'm like, I have been watching the show for 10 years. This episode has never made me cry. Why am I triggered right now? Like, what happened?
Well,
It's great.
hey,
I just love it.
it's a mark of a good show. It can hit you emotionally at different stages of your life and different times. It can resonate in different ways. The show or movie isn't just in one intended purpose.
Absolutely. Perfect.
Kind of like, well, I like David Gilmour, the guitarist. He's not a girl. Or just Gilmour though, but same type of thing. Like he can make his guitar resonate in so many different ways. But we're past the music. We're down to the top 5 game day foods.
Hmm. Oh man. I'm going pigs in a blanket are like pretty clearly 101 for me, dipped in a little mustard. I'm all about it. Uh I like cheese dip, but I want the sausage in it. I want spicy sausage in my cheese dip. Man, those are like those two I'm pretty much always doing if I have people over. The like ham and cheese rolls are banging. Meatballs are fantastic. Little Smokies. Pretty much anything I can do in a crock pot is getting a nod from me. Like those are all every crock pot snack is a good snack.
The convenience of the crock pot, right? It's a very helpful tool.
If it's got a crock pot or a crescent roll, I'm probably in on the recipe. Like I'm probably gonna try it at least once.
All right, so I don't think I had to poke you too hard to answer this one, but top 5 Oklahoma State athletes of all time. It could be any sport.
This is tough. Because I wanna okay, Justin Blackman going on that list, probably one of my favorite guys to ever watch live. Brandon Whedon, another guy that's going on that list, if only because his story was hilarious and fun, and he was like 30 years old, beating up 18-year-olds on the football field, which was a blast. Ricky Fowler, I think, really rejuvenated the PGA Tour and got young people into watching golf because he was wearing flat bill hats and bright colors, and so I've always
That's why
adored
he wears
him.
orange. I didn't know. Okay, cool.
Yeah,
Thank you.
went to school at Oklahoma State, so he's still like he'll come back and talk and stuff. So I love me some Ricky Fowler. Right now, Victor Hovland, who's on the PGA Tour, was an Oklahoma State Cowboy. I adore him. He's just such a sweet soul, and he still like lives in Stillwater when he's not like going to beautiful golf courses all over the world. So love Victor Hovland. And then, man, I'm probably gonna go, and this is like a way throwback. This was when it was like 2006, I think, maybe 2004. There was a guy on the basketball team named Daniel Bobick, and my cousin and I used to like my grandma lived in Stillwater, so we went to a lot of games like with my grandparents, and his name was so fun to say like I was an announcer, and I did it. I mean, I did it it still like lives in somewhere back here. So every time his name comes up, or every time anybody's like, name a random college basketball player, it's always Daniel Bobick in my head because I had so much fun as a child mimicking the way the announcers did his name.
Make it sound like Bop It.
Yeah, kind of.
Oh, or is that a sin to say it like that? I guess if so, then Larry Monkey, or I assume it's Larry Monkey, Dynasty Hot Sauce Pod, is calling us sinners would be appropriate, or at least me anyway.
Yeah, I probably fit under that moniker.
I think we all do, but yeah, apparently Dave's loving my puns. Thank you. I'm glad you don't hate them. Don't because I mean I wouldn't stop necessarily, but it would still be affecting someone negative. So I would hate this. Oops, you got this, says Larry. So yeah, well, got this. I think that we're kind of heading just out now. The high fives are done. I actually kept this under an hour. Usually I ramble a little too much between questions. Maybe I was disciplined tonight. Maybe as awesome to get a great female in the fantasy industry, but a great analyst in general. I want to go watch some female curling, so maybe that's my rush to get out of here. It's the Women's Worlds this weekend, so go Canada.
Hell yeah.
But yeah, Linda, thanks so much for stopping by. This was awesome.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Again, thank you for rescheduling because I didn't feel well. I appreciate it. I hate canceling, so I'd never like to send that message when something's gone array. And I'm glad we were able to get it done in a quick amount of time, a quick turnaround.
Well, I will say it almost does fall really nicely It's kind of a French expression. I kind of use that wrong. Ça tombe bien. But because normally do this on Mondays, and next Monday will be the 2-point conversion. So check out Gladys and Jay as always. And I know Gerson was on last time. Maybe he'll join again. Who knows? But yeah, so definitely check them out Monday. And yeah, normally the show is alternating Mondays. However, April 4th I'll be unavailable. So the next episode of Press Coverage will actually be next Saturday. So back-to-back Saturdays. So maybe that Linda's actually nice that we kind of prep the viewers, listeners to kind of join us on a Saturday. But yeah, next week, 7 days from now, I'll have Jordan Richards on from the Wake Up the Ray GQ pod. So yeah, Jordan, great Canadian. So yeah, definitely get to show my nationalism, I'll say. I already said go Canada, though, so I do that regardless. But yeah, and of course, check out everything on the Going for Two Live network. Of course, the Armchair Show, the flagship show, Jeff Lambert, every Wednesday. I know Linda's been on that show before. And it's always so great. But yeah, I think Speak On It returns next Tuesday. So definitely check out Danny and D as always. And yeah, I'm on Twitter at Senra Says. Linda, is there anything you want to plug before we get out of here?
We're just pumping out content Mondays and Thursdays on Matthew Berry's Fantasy Life newsletter, so you can subscribe to that for free. And then if you're listening to this and you happen to be an Oklahoma State fan or a Big 12 fan of another Big 12 school, you can find Locked On Pokes, which I do, but there's also Locked On Big 12, and all the schools have I think we finally have a host for every school. So if you're a Big 12 fan, head over to Locked On Network. We've got the shows for you.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm very impressed. And yeah, so on behalf of Linda and everyone at Going for Two, thank you, all the listeners, viewers. This was Press Coverage. Bye for now.